Why the Middle East borders guarantee forever wars. For decades now, the Middle East is constantly at war. Even today as we speak, countries such as Syria and Iraq are embroiled in a civil war, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. Things only seem to get worse. But why is the Middle East so volatile? Despite the Middle East being predominantly Muslim, why do all the countries in this part of the world not get along? In this video, we'll look at why the Middle East forever guarantees war. The modern Middle East is the most geopolitically complicated chessboard in the world. You see, the borders of modern Middle Eastern countries have long been a source of tension and instability in the region. This can be traced back to the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secret agreement signed during World War I between Britain and France in 1916. The agreement aimed to divide the Ottoman Empire's territories in the Middle East between the two European powers, disregarding existing ethnic, tribal, and religious divisions. The Sykes-Picot Agreement drew arbitrary lines on the map, carving out new borders without considering the region's social, cultural, and historical complexities. As a result, the borders created by this agreement failed to reflect the aspirations and identities of the diverse populations residing within these territories. Communities that had coexisted for centuries suddenly found themselves separated by new national boundaries, often without their consent. The imposition of these artificial borders sowed the seeds of conflict and instability. It created a sense of injustice and resentment among the different ethnic and religious groups. As these aspirations for self-determination were disregarded, the Sykes-Picot Agreement has resulted in a patchwork of states with diverse populations and conflicting interests. The consequences of the Sykes-Picot Agreement continue to be felt to this day. The borders it established have been a constant source of tension and conflict in the Middle East. The artificial nature of these borders has often hindered the formation of cohesive and stable nation-states, as various ethnic, tribal, and religious groups have sought to assert their own identities and aspirations. The region has witnessed secessionist movements, border disputes, and ethnic conflicts as different groups have vied for control over territories they considered their own. The struggle for power and resources, combined with the unresolved issues stemming from the arbitrary borders, have perpetrated cycles of violence and instability in the Middle East. But it's not just the Sykes-Picot Agreement that has resulted in instability in the Middle East today. Another major cause for instability has to be religion. Despite the Middle East being predominantly Muslim, it's more complex than it seems. One of the key factors contributing to the ongoing conflict is the proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This bitter rivalry, fueled by sectarian differences, geopolitical ambitions, and competing regional influences, has had far-reaching consequences and has consequently hindered the prospects of peace in the Middle East. At the heart of the Iran-Saudi proxy war lies a deep-rooted sectarian divide. The split between Sunni and Shia Muslims have historical roots dating back centuries, and it continues to be a significant factor driving conflict in the region. Iran, a prominently Shia Muslim country, has long sought to expand its influence in the Middle East and establish itself as the leader of the Shia world. The 1979 Iranian Revolution, which brought an Islamic republic to power in Iran, intensified sectarian tensions as the new leadership portrayed itself as the defender of oppressed Shia Muslims worldwide. This move challenged Saudi Arabia's claim to leadership within the Sunni Muslim community and created a rift that persists to this day. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, is predominantly Sunni and views itself as the guardians of Sunni Islam. The ruling house of Saud derives its legitimacy in part from its custodianship of Islam's two holiest sites, Mecca and Medina, giving the kingdom significant influence within the Sunni world. As Iran and Saudi Arabia compete for religious and geopolitical influence, they can use each sectarianism as a tool to rally support among Muslims in the region and beyond, further polarizing the Middle East along sectarian lines. This ideological clash has fueled tensions and exacerbated existing fault lines, leading to a vicious cycle of violence and instability. Both Iran and Saudi Arabia have been involved in supporting various proxy groups throughout the Middle East, providing them with financial, military, and ideological support. These proxies are often engaged in armed conflicts, further destabilizing the region and creating a breeding ground for extremism and terrorism. The conflicts in Yemen, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon are stark examples of how this proxy war has engulfed the region and perpetrated a cycle of violence. In Yemen, for instance, the Iran-backed Houthi rebels have been fighting against the Saudi-led coalition, which seeks to restore the internationally recognized Yemen government. The war in Yemen has resulted in a severe humanitarian crisis, with widespread displacement, food insecurity, and a cholera outbreak. Similarly, in Syria, Iran supports the Bashar al-Assad regime, while Saudi Arabia backs various rebel groups, contributing to the protracted and devastating civil war that has cost hundreds of thousands of lives and displaced millions. The competition for regional dominance between Iran and Saudi Arabia has also been driven by geopolitical ambitions. Both countries view themselves as the natural leaders of the Middle East and seek to expand their spheres of influence. This power struggle has led to the militarization of their foreign policies, as they attempt to secure their positions and undermine each other's interests. As a result, they have directly or indirectly supported opposing factions in conflicts, prolonging and intensifying the violence. Beyond the religious dimension, there are also significant geopolitical factors at play. Iran and Saudi Arabia find themselves on opposing sides in various regional conflicts, aligning with different countries and non-state actors to advance their interests. Iran has historically maintained close ties with countries like Syria, Lebanon, through its support for Hezbollah, and Iraq. In contrast, Saudi Arabia has sought alliances with other Sunni-majority countries, such as Egypt and the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC states. This complex web of alliances further entrenches the proxy war and complicates efforts to find peaceful solutions. Furthermore, the proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia has been exacerbated by the involvement of other regional and global powers. This rivalry has become a battleground for larger geopolitical dynamics, with countries like the United States, Russia, and Turkey getting involved in exacerbating tensions. Each of these external actors has its interests and motivations, often driven by economic considerations, security concerns, or the desire to counterbalance the influence of their rivals. The United States, for example, has historically supported Saudi Arabia as a key ally in the region, while also maintaining a hostile stance towards Iran. This has included supplying Saudi Arabia with weapons and military assistance, which has fueled the Saudi-led coalition's military campaign in Yemen. On the other hand, Iran has found support from Russia, which has geopolitical interests in the region, and has provided military aid to the Assad regime in Syria. These external actors are not only exacerbating the proxy war, but they also complicate efforts to find peaceful resolutions. The conflicting interests and interventions of these powers often lead to further divisions and escalations, undermining the prospects of stability and peace in the region. The destructive consequences of this proxy war are felt not only by countries directly involved, but also by the people of the Middle East as a whole. The ongoing conflicts have resulted in immense human suffering, with millions of lives lost, widespread displacement, and the destruction of infrastructure. The humanitarian crisis in Yemen, for example, is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of this protracted conflict on innocent civilians. Moreover, the proxy war has provided fertile ground for the growth of extremist groups. The power vacuum created by conflicts and the erosion of state authority has allowed organizations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda to exploit the chaos and establish strongholds. These groups thrive in environments of instability and conflict, further exacerbating the violence and impeding the prospects for peace. Another reason why the proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia has failed to bring about peace is the absence of meaningful diplomatic efforts. Rather than engaging in constructive dialogue and seeking diplomatic solutions, both sides have resulted in aggressive rhetoric and actions that further fuel the conflict. The lack of trust, combined with the deep-seated animosity, has made it challenging to find common ground and work towards a sustainable, peaceful settlement. Diplomatic initiatives, such as the various rounds of talks between Iran and the international community over its nuclear program, have been often overshadowed by the proxy war and the wider regional dynamics. The breakdown of diplomatic channels and the failure to build trust and understanding between Iran and Saudi Arabia have perpetrated the cycle of violence and hindered the prospects for a comprehensive peace settlement. In conclusion, the proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia has been a major obstacle to peace in the Middle East. The sectarian divide, geopolitical ambitions, involvement of external powers, and the absence of meaningful diplomacy have all contributed to the perpetuation of this conflict. Unless the root causes of the rivalry are addressed and meaningful efforts toward reconciliation are made, the region is likely to continue suffering from instability, violence, and the devastating consequences of this never-ending proxy war. That's it for this video. What are your thoughts? Will the Middle East ever see peace? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.